What is up, gamers? So if you've taken a look at my tier list video a while back, there was Youthbook on there, which was pretty obvious, but to some people, for surprising reason, was Overlord was also right next to Youthbook. And the main reason for that is because we got a new promo for it. So because of that promo, Overlord becomes very similar to how Youthbook plays, where you just have a bunch of drive checks and really big Vanguard pressure, and you're able to build a hand. But in Overlord's case, you're also able to hit the opponent's rear guards a lot too, and make them have less of a field. Youthbook gets a little bit more card advantage in an early game, while Overlord gets a stronger later game, more disruption for the opponent. So this deck profile is going to show you a very baseline list and explain the card choices for it. And yeah, we'll hop on in. So we will start with the ride line. So normal starter, then there's bar. So whenever you ride Halbe on top of him, you can Counterblast 1 and add any grade 1, doesn't have to be a unit, from your deck to your hand. So this can let you get the new promo, or a PG if you have enough of the promo. And the matchup you're in is very PG or die-like Gravidia or Leonore. Then there's Halbe. So when rode upon by an Overlord, then you can call Halbe to the rear guard. And then once per turn on rear guard, if your Vanguard's an Overlord, you can Soul Blast 1 and give himself and Overlord plus 5k per turn. So this just lets your Overlord swing, because one of the things it kind of struggles with is hitting numbers itself. So Halbe just gives it a better magic number to make the opponent have to guard for more. And then the grade 3 of the ride line, which is Dragonic Overlord. So on Vanguard rearguard, whenever it attacks a rearguard, the opponent cannot guard from hand. And then Vanguard once per turn, whenever it hits, you can Counterblast 1, discard a card, and restand with -1 drive. Overlord is really good at being able to pressure the opponent's rearguards, and each turn you get 3 drive checks, and you don't lose any cards from your hand for that, since it's only a discard 1 and then you drive check, so it's like you just normal twin drived. So you're able to filter your hand and dig deeper into your deck for more cards with it, while also being able to punish the opponent for doing more aggressive plays with their rearguards. And yeah, it doesn't have to hit a rearguard to restand, so if the opponent doesn't have a rearguard in play whenever you ride on this, then you can still swing Vanguard, and if they don't block it, then you will still get the restand and attack again. Very good ride line, one of the better ones in the format right now, since you have a search for any grade 1, which there's a lot of good grade 1s in the deck, and then you have a free call that also can power boost your Vanguard. And then the main star of the deck for the end. So the end is a grade 3 with Persona Rad, and has the skills during your turn. If you have the normal Dragonic Overlord in your soul, then he gets plus 5k power, and his drive checks cannot decrease from card effects. His second skill is Vanguard once per turn. At the end of the battle that he attacks, you can Counterblast 1, discard 2 cards, and restand and lose a drive. That's why we run Overlord in the ride deck, is so we ride Overlord, then we ride the end. So then on the end's turn, we will swing for 18 with twin drive, and then Counterblast, discard 2, restand, and swing 18 with twin drive again. So this is really strong because you will have twin drive twice and swing at the Vanguard twice, and there's a lot of ways to power boost your field, so you're just hitting a bunch of big numbers with it, and it makes the Vanguard have really big crit pressure from all the crit triggers you're able to pull off this. And because of how his restand works, if you hit the over trigger, then you'll get 3 attacks no matter the ordering of it. Like in Gravidia, the over trigger is really big win con on here, and also just hitting crits. And the really strong thing about this compared to the normal Overlord is it can attack at Vanguard twice. Isn't reliant on hitting. So no matter what, you're gonna get 2 Vanguard swings, which is very strong. And then on Persona Ride turn, it also just makes your turns a lot scarier, because if you hit 1 crit, then all of your rearguards will be swinging really big also. And it basically demands the opponent to have a bunch of shield or PGs in their hand in order to live the turn smoothly. That's it for grade 3s. Moving on to grade 2s, we have 4 Burning Horn Dragon. So on place on rearguard, you can Counterblast 1, look at top 7, add any Overlord to your hand, and if you don't add anything, then you countercharge 1. So it's a way to find your the end to be able to guarantee get the ride you need. And then if you end up whiffing, you don't lose anything out of it. And then his second skill is whenever your Overlord Vanguard attacks, then he gets plus 5k till end of turn. And it's not once per turn. So usually what you'll do is you'll have the end on your Vanguard, and then you'll swing. Burning Horn gets plus 5. Restand, swing again, Burning Horn gets plus 5. So then it'll be 18, 18, then 20. So really solid numbers on Burning Horn, and it just makes the deck super consistent. It can help find you at the ends to either get the initial ride off or help you dig for Persona rides, which a lot of decks actually don't have. Next is 4 Brachial Force. So some people might not understand why this is in here, because it's a very strange card. So on Rearguard, on hit, you can retire it, and then retire one of your opponent's Rearguards and draw a card. So this is really good because of the fact that it doesn't have to hit Vanguard for it to go off. So one of the big things with the deck is you want to pressure the opponent, depleting their hand very aggressively. So with Brachial Force, if you swing it at a Rearguard, no matter what, the opponent is losing multiple cards. They will either lose a card for guarding the attack, or if they let the attack hit, then they'll lose another Rearguard. So Brachial Force just basically forces the opponent to have to use cards, be able to go through it easier. And the more cards they use on this is less cards they can use on the end. Because of that, the end just naturally gets more pressure because of Brachial Force pressuring the opponent's field also. And the fact that it replaces itself is really good also. It also can help dig through your deck a bit deeper if you do end up getting the on hits off, which can help you find either more Persona rides or Burning Horns or just more pieces you need. So Brachial Force is very good in here. The rest of the grade 2s are pretty optional, so I have 3 more in the Halbe in here, because just hitting numbers on the end is really important. So if you just have 1 Halbe in play, you can Soul Blast 1 and have the end become a 23k beater, which if the opponent wants to 2 to pass it, they have to drop 25k shield, which is a very awkward number for Overdress, because they either need a 15 and a 10, or a 20 and a 5. So no matter what, they're going to be dropping 2 cards to guard Overlord if they want to, because of the Nahalem boost and the ends. And the deck doesn't really use Soul outside of Nahalem, so you just have excess Soul that Nahalem can utilize compared to probably the best way to utilize it compared to like any other card in the nation. And then last for the grade 2s is 2 Berserk Dragon. This could be really anything you want. Berserk Dragon is nice because it's a 15k beater that also can use a Counterblast to snipe a Rearguard. So let's say in Youthbook if they have Therapy Angels, you can snipe it. Against Drajewel, you can snipe Falcates. Just having a guaranteed way to snipe a Rearguard is very important. And it doesn't have to attack a Vanguard for the skill, but most of the time you will be, because this is a 15k, and then you'll have a 8k booster usually, so then it'll be 23 by itself, which is a very solid number. It forces them to guard with a 15k shield, which in Overdress it's a lot of shield. So yeah, just having the way to guarantee hit Rearguards is very important. But yeah, this is the most flexible spot in the deck. It could be realistically anything you want. Moving on to grade 1s, the reason why this deck is good is Dragritter Halbe. I have proxies right now because the card's very expensive, and have not gotten them yet. So why is this card good? So whenever it's discarded by an Overlord effect, it counts as 2 discards instead of 1. And then also whenever it's discarded from hand for the cost of your Overlord Vanguard skill, then you can call it to a back row Rearguard with plus 5k power till end of turn. So this is really good because it gives Overlord really solid numbers from the back row, because usually they have good numbers in the front row, but the back row boosters are really small, so they don't turn out to be like super big attacks. With Halbe, it's a 13k booster, and so because of that, let's say we had like Berserk Dragon here. Berserk Dragon's a 15k, and then Halbe is a 13k. So it'll be a 28k attack, which forces 20k shield, so they either need a front trigger or 2 cards to guard it. Same thing with Nahalem, it's a 15k, and then Burning Horn can be a 20k, so then it'll be 33. So no matter what, they would need 2 cards to guard that attack. And then you can also put it behind your Vanguard if you know the opponent doesn't have a PG in hand, or you want to force their PGs out earlier on. Then you can call this behind Vanguard and then have it be a super massive Vanguard swing that has potential crit pressure on it, and it just makes the turn a lot more threatening. The really strong part about it though is its first effect of counting as 2 discards. So one of the main issues the end has had before this is that it never actually generated advantage in their turn, because you would have to discard 2 and then drive check 2. So you never actually plussed off of your restands. But with Halbe, it changes that because it counts as 2 discards. So just for this one card, it fulfills the 2 discard for the end, which makes the amount of advantage the end gets a lot bigger, because then you do twin drive, you discard just this and then restand and then swing and twin drive again. So you went +3 over your drive checks instead of +2, which is really strong. One card differences are really big in Overdress because there isn't as much advantage generating in the... Halbe just makes the deck flow so smoothly, and then you don't actually neg off of it either because Halbe calls itself out. So between it counting as the 1 discard for the end and then it calling itself back out, you just get so many cards out of it, and it makes the deck very strong because of that, which is why it is considered to be tier 1. Then we have for Fushimachi Madoka. So on Rearguard and Guardian Circle, if your opponent has 4 more cards in drop, then it gets 2k power and 5k shield, and if they have 8 or more, it gets 5k more shield. So this is basically a way to cheat extra 15k shields into your deck. Most other decks don't have a way to generate extra shield, but the end having access to more 15k shields while also being able to generate extra cards just makes the deck a lot more tankier and able to live longer. And then also the 10k boost can come in handy at times, because if you put it behind Vanguard, if it's the end, then it will be a 28k swing, which is a very big number for a Vanguard swing. And then it just makes the game plan go a lot smoother. It's pretty flexible on what it can do on either being a fat shield or a 10k booster. It's basically Wayward Therapy Angel, but without as many restrictions on it. And it has a separate thing it could do, which is be a fat shield. So yeah, very strong card in here. Could be replaced with other things, but there isn't much else that would be better than this, unless if you want to go more aggressive and put in things with bigger numbers. So like some of the new 13k boosters could be good in this spot also. And then 1 Gojo. This is also the most flexible spot in the deck. I like Gojo because this deck is very CB intensive. So having access to Gojo from your grade 3 Overlord being able to guarantee the hit and then make that skill free is really strong. And because of Bar being able to search any grade 1, if you already have the Halbe in hand, then you can search for Gojo and then call Gojo down early and then swing with it, and then you can retire it and countercharge 1. So you don't plus at all, but you didn't counterblast off of it. And then you also decked in the deck 1, so you have a higher chance to hit crit triggers off of it. So yeah, just a solid card. You could put really anything here. It doesn't have to be Gojo. I just personally like Gojo. And then of course, 4 Sentinels. For triggers, over trigger, Bushy Road banned this. It's not going to get banned in Standard, I assume, but it's a lot more broken in here than in other decks because you drive check a lot more. So in theory, once you hit turn 3, you should be getting 3 to 4 drive checks every single turn. And this overtrigger is just nutsoid with the end because it restands it. So if you hit like an early crit, then you can swing with that crit 3 times, and then you can also give it 100 million power. So yeah, just a very good overtrigger. Then for heal, this is just very baseline so far of having just vanilla heals in here right now. One thing I will say is really neither of the counter heals really help against Youthbook. So if you're planning to just play this to fight against Youthbook, then you don't need either of the counter heals. But if you want to, it depends on your meta what counter heals you need. But if you're going into, let's say, Worlds and you're wanting to bring the end, most people will either be playing the end or Youthbook, and Youthbook, none of the counter heals help unless if they play Zest, which most builds don't. And then you can run the restanding one for the end, because nothing naturally gains a crit in this deck. So yeah, just depends on your meta, which counter hero you want to play. Just having 4 vanillas in here for now, because I don't really... yeah. And then for the rest of the triggers, 8 crit. These don't have to be flails, because the only soul we're using is through Nahalem, and then Nahalem calling itself out. So unless you are using Nahalem multiple times in a turn, then these aren't necessary at all. And they could be vanilla triggers, which they're also very... But yeah, you want to run 8 crit because you're drive checking so much, and you hit really big numbers, but the numbers aren't as scary if you don't have crit pressure on them. So you just want to see the crit when necessary, and just have as big of a chance as possible to hit them. The reason you could run vanilla triggers over this is if you want to call more boosters behind the end. If it's a 4k, then it doesn't hit a nice number. But if it's a 5k, then it hits a new magic number, since it's base 18, so it'll go up to 23 with a vanilla trigger, which asks for more shield. And the last 3 draw triggers. This could be fronts also. It's really personal preference what you want to do. I just personally like draws a lot in this format, because there's not a lot of ways to generate card advantage. This deck can do it pretty decently because of Halbe plus the end. But since, yeah, front triggers are better defensively because they're 20k shields, and they can also protect your front row if you hit them defensively. I just like the 10k shields this provides personally, but there are times 20k shields are better, so it's just all personal preference. So looking at Mulligan, the main checklist you need for this deck is you have to see the end. If you don't see the end, this deck just gets a lot worse, because normal Overlord doesn't attack at the Vanguard twice, guaranteed at least, while the end can guarantee do that. So you just have to see him for the game plan to go really well. And then Burning Horn. So Burning Horn searches for the end, so that's really big. It can almost guarantee Persona Ride, and it's also just a big beater. So it just makes the game plan more consistent. And then after that, I would keep Halbe. If you're able to get a Halbe early on, then it gives your bar more freedom to get whatever card it wants. And then also using Halbe early on with normal Overlord can be a bit aggressive for the opponent to be able to... So having it be a 13k booster for another rearguard is very strong. Went over why this card's good, so yeah. As long as you have this combination on your turn 4, then you're looking pretty good. So we're gonna do a test hand real quick, just to show you guys like the smooth gameplay that this deck can do. Okay, so I determine if I go first or second in a test hand by rolling a dice. If it's evens, I'm first. If it's odds, I'm second. Evens, so we're gonna go first. So for our opening hand, we hit pretty solid, the end and Burning Horn. You could keep a PG if you want, if you're afraid of like a really strong turn 3, or if you want to completely prep up for a Persona Ride turn. If I was going second, I'd be more inclined to keep this, but since I'm going first, I'll be able to dig through my deck a bit deeper through Overlord. So I'll send those 3 back, and then draw 3 new cards. So Berserk Dragon, Crit, OT. Okay. Drawing OT isn't the worst thing in the world, because it's just a 50k shield. And yeah, so we are first, so draw. We end up drawing the PG. So discard wise, because of the extra 15k shields we have in the deck from Madoka's, it is completely okay to discard a trigger. It depends on the matchup if you need the 15k shield early to like stop the aggression. We're gonna assume they're playing like a super slow deck, let's say Bruce. So we'll discard then ride bar, and then nothing else to do, so we'll pass turn. Then we'll take 1 damage, so heal. Doesn't change anything here. And then on our next turn, we'll draw. So hitting Halbe here is really big. So we'll discard Berserk Dragon, because we like the rest of our hand, and discarding these big shields are going to be detrimental later in the game. And then we also have the 3 pieces that we want to open up with now. So we will ride Nahalem and then do bar skill. So because we have the PG and the Halbe, we can either try to set up a second Halbe off of this, or we can grab Gojo if we want to be a bit more aggressive. So I like Gojo here personally. So we'll add Gojo to hand. Okay. And then I'll just plop the Gojo down if the opponent's deck doesn't have a way to remove this early on. So then we'll swing 18. Most of the time they'll no-guard this. So we'll hit a heal. So if we didn't hit the heal, we would be doing Gojo skill, but since we hit it, we don't need to. So we can keep the Gojo around for Overlord next turn. And it really warrants the opponent not to call a rear guard to be aggressive with. Because then Overlord will swing into it and will guarantee get the Gojo counter charge off of it. And then make Overlord skill free. So they'll go into the next turn, they'll attack once, so we'll take one, so it's Halbe. And then it'll be our turn again. So stand and draw. So with this type of hand, we'll discard the trigger that we revealed last turn. So we'll discard the heal and then ride into Overlord. Then the Halem skill will call itself out. So one of the things you can think about here is if you're not wanting to be as aggressive, then you can move the Nahalem back here and save it for your VN turn. But if you want to put on pressure, then you can keep Nahalem here. And yeah, we don't really need to call anything else at the moment. So we can go... we'll say we want to be a bit more aggressive if we're against Bruce, right? So we'll do Nahalem skill, giving both... And then, yeah, so we will swing for 1826 to Vanguard. So this is really problematic for them, because if they decide not to guard this, then Overlord can restand with potentially triggers on him. So this basically forces the opponent to have to either get lucky off of our draft checks or to drop a lot of shield on this attack, or PG. So we'll say they PG'd this attack, so we will check the end and Halbe. And then we'll swing for 15 and then they'll take it, right? And then since it's Bruce's turn, what are they at? 2 damage? 3 damage? 3 damage at this point? We'll say they healed one, so they're at 2. Then they'll get Julian, and then Julian can be aggressive. So we'll say they attack into Nahalem. And then we'll take another Halbe, okay? And then we'll guard 15. Something like that. So then we will stand and draw. And then hard ride the end. So now he has +5 since we have the Overlord and Soul. And then we'll call Burning Horn, do its skill, Counter Blast, check top 7. We hit it off this, so no point digging any more. And now we have guaranteed Persona Ride for the next 2 turns because we have another the end in hand. So it really depends how much you want to commit this turn. We don't really have another front row attacker in our hand, unless if we want to call the end down. But we can also play a pretty decent grind game because of the pressure. So we'll just start with this. So we'll go 1826 to Vanguard, and then Burning Horn will get +5 on the attack. And then we'll Twin Drive for Brachial Force and a draw trigger. Because the end isn't hitting solid numbers after this attack, we'll give the power to Vanguard, and then we'll draw one, so we drew Nahalem. And then we'll say it hit, right? So we'll do Gojo skill to retire and countercharge. And then we'll do the end skill to counterblast. And we will discard a Halbe to restand. And then the Halbe skill will call itself out and get +5. And then the end will swing for 28. And then Burning Horn gets +5 on the swings. Now this is a 33k column, which is really huge. And we still have Twin Drive since we have the Overlord and Soul. So our Twin Drive will be... Nahalem and a crit. So we'll say they PG this attack, so we'll give all the effects to Burning Horn, and then swing 43 with a crit to Vanguard. So, very strong turn. Even though we didn't have full front row attacks, because we hit a trigger, the turn just got a lot scarier. And since we get 4 checks, we're almost guaranteed to hit a trigger, at least 1 trigger. So yeah, so... let's say it's the next turn and they're going crazy, going insane. So they kill this, we take 2, hit a crit, we go with OT on something, let's say we drop 2 PGs, discard a draw and a Halbe. Actually, we can, if we're looking to end the game next turn, we can drop Brachioforce here. And yeah, that should be enough to live through most turns. So we'll stand a draw, drew another Persona Ride. So we will Persona Ride, and then we will draw off it. So we kept the 2 Halbes here instead of discarding one of them, because we didn't really use the Halbe earlier. I guess we did, but now we Persona Mode, so we have the extra soul to do them both. So if we're looking to end the game this turn, then this is really strong to try to push for it. So we'll Soul Blast 2, and then our Vanguard will get plus 10 off of it, and then our 2 Halbes will get plus 5. So now this is a very, very strong turn, and we have a Halbe in hand ready to discard. So we will swing with Vanguard for 38, and then we'll Twin Drive into Madoka and a crit. So our Vanguard's already pretty big. It's a 3-card guard, basically, if they want to 2 to pass it. So we'll just give crit to Vanguard and then power to... We'll give power to this Halbe. So then end of battle, we will Counterblast 1, and then we'll discard Halbe. So with Halbe, where you want to place it depends on like how you read the opponent's hand. If you read they have another PG in their hand, then you should call it here. If you read they don't have a PG, then you should call it behind Vanguard, and then make Vanguard really big. For like simplicity's sake, we'll just put it behind the Halbe, and then the end will restand. Also, Halbe gets plus 5. And then we'll have the end swing again for 38 with Twin Drive, and then an extra crit. So our drive checks draw a trigger, so we'll draw on the Halbe, and then we'll give power to left side the Halbe, and then second check PG. And then yeah, this will be 43 here, and then 48 here. And that is basically it. You can see we just constantly have like a pretty thick hand because of the Halbes being discard fodder. We also hit 2 draw triggers during all those drive checks, so our hand is just naturally bigger. And then we're basically always going to have Persona Ride because of how much we're drive checking through the deck and because of Burning Horn. So we're able to get to this situation pretty consistently. And yeah, that is basically it for this deck profile. It is mainly as a way to get people to understand how this deck functions, or give them a good skeleton on how to build the deck and see how it's supposed to go. So yeah, looking in the worlds, basically expect it to be mostly Youthbook and Overlord. You might see some other decks like Ava and Mahar still competing, but expect these to be the most popular decks, at least. And yeah, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.